Hi everyone, I'm Echoes and I'm a VTuber, and I'm very excited to talk about Hat Atelier episode 5, as it is pretty much the best looking episode we've had so far. Especially since this episode has been highly weighted, at least from an interview that was shared by Crunchyroll actually recently, where I believe that either the director or the animation director mentioned that episode 5 was his favorite episode to work on, and I could definitely get why he says that. So yeah, let's break down into the details. So in the beginning, we get this cool shot of the dragon flying. And you can see it's very much a hand-drawn dragon, and you can see that the girls are kind of um trying to figure out how to escape the labyrinth here. You see that they're kind of like, even when they're running in one direction, they end up in the same place they were before. And then they're kind of hiding out in this place a bit. And then you see that Coco here is giving Tetia back her hat. And then she's apologizing. Everyone's like, sorry, it's my fault that we all dragged into this. And then she gives Tetia her cloak, so she's not cold anymore. And then you can see that Coco is opening up a little bit in her insecurities here. Because she says that having the cloak is comforting to her, essentially. Knowing that I still look like a witch on the outside helps me be brave. And then you'll be a lot more help than I've been, so that's why she's trying to help out here. And then you can see that Tatia unleashes one of her best spells here, which is this really fluffy, cozy, warm spell here. And then you can see that Tatia apologizes to her in this little space here. It's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I looked at you like this was your fault. I mean, technically it is, but yeah, which Coco mentions here. But it's not like you actually said it and if acted like it's no better. So essentially, she feels bad for treating her not treating her as well, and as she was scared. And then you can see that Coco's is admiring her spells, like, oh, I feel so good in here. And then Tetia's like, oh, this is my own very own creation I made myself. Because the thing is that she mentions that her dream was that, if I can remember correctly, when I was a kid, I dreamed about napping on a cloud. It's kind of like a very what do you call it? Very understandable dream to want to have. Because clouds are so fluffy, you kind of imagine wanting to sleep on them. And then you can see that she isn't the spell isn't quite complete, but she's working on it. And she says that once it's done, I like to submit it for approval as a general spell. But it is my dream, and that means a lot to me. And let's all become real witches together. So it's like, oh, let's work on this together. And you see that a guy here is like, oh, you need to adjust this. It needs to be made of a substance with a bit more mass to give it a bit more, because it's pretty airy essentially. And they all come in because it's too cold outside. And it's like, oh, you need a cloud-like material as a substitute here. Then it'd just be a normal mattress. And then here's where they describe the depth of the spell, or the details essentially. It's like this whole maze-like map seems to be under a spell, which is why they keep ending up the same place. Which is, I really love this imagery here where you see the girls running around like in a circle essentially. Any kind of magic, even the form of kind, needs a casting skill to work. And then you can see that Coco now brings up what she saw earlier, which she didn't get to explain before. And you see that there's a casting skill found on this giant tower. And then they also mention how the dragon is actually getting bigger and the girls are becoming smaller. So it's like, perhaps it's like, essentially the longer time passes, the bigger the dragon becomes. Probably like a way of like, oh, you got to do this quickly, so you could pass my trial, blah blah blah. Anyway, either way, the dragon's pregnant casting steel will have to defeat it. And this is where Coco mentions some observations she has had. Like, I don't think your fire spell did much to it. You slowed it down, but I don't think it actually hurt it, so I don't think fire is the best way. And then you can see that I got a bit frustrated. But this is where Coco explains her plan here. The plan is to make Tetia's dream come true. You can see that it's essentially making a bed for the dragon as a way of distracting it. So, which makes sense based on our experiences, right? Teddy's cloud makes us feel warm and safe. So what do you make a cloud bed for the dragon? And then I was like, there's no way, but then Riche gets it. It's like, all are helpless before the power of a warm bed, which I 100% get, honestly. As a person who likes to sleep, I get that. See, Agat's like contemplating it. He's trying to convince her the most. And then you can see that Coco's like, I'm just checking the dragon's okay, because when we ran away before, it slammed into a pillar and it was kind of hurt a bit. So I thought that this was a plan we're trying. So she's trying to find a more what do they call it? A nicer way of resolving this instead of using violence, which I appreciate. I said that the spells that aren't forbidden are meant to make people happy, I believe is what she says specifically. So I want to show the dragon some kinder magic. And she doesn't want anybody to get hurt, not us, and not the dragon either. Aga helps her, probably helps us, we'll be even in better shape. And this is what Tetia confirms as well. Yeah, Aga agrees here. And then now they're doing their brainstorming session. So something as fluffy as a cloud, but with proper substance. Something we could find here. So they can't use they're thinking about using shredded paper, cloth, hair. But then you can see that they come up with using very fine sand based off their wall buster spell they used before. The more signs drawn to the seal, the finer the sand it makes. And this is where Riche is using. One of her specialties is that she's very, very good at drawing tiny seals. So it's best to allow these girls to focus on their strengths here. And Teti Fango spelled out gather sand in the central desert. And then you can see Agat's like, oh, I'm gonna work on the enveloping spell that keep everything in place. And then you can see that Coco wants to help. And you can see that Agat's kind of making a compromise here to some extent. Because she agreed to the plan. But essentially, but she's not at a skill level where I can trust you with the spell, which I think is a far better explanation in this case. Because essentially, Coco can be trusted more once she gets more experience. And this is where Coco spends a few minutes observing the other girls, which I think proves to be extremely helpful to her here. So how does she draw such a perfect circle? You can see that each of the girls make a sort of like a circle gesture with their wrist, essentially, or a pen, as a way of practicing circles, because essentially it's a motion that the more they do it, the better they get at it, you know? Which is kind of nice seeing in action. All the girls, I think, do it, actually. And then that's where she makes the observation here. And then with whether Tatiana and Richa do something similar, they kind of do it, and then you see that she has never really thought about, these details about, like, how to make a circle nicer. Oh, so just winging it, you do practice motions, and then once you're confident, you're like, okay, I got it, and then you try. That's why she says she never thought about it, but now she's focusing more on the technique. And unless I can do it like they can, she's going to keep trying. So definitely one of Coco's greatest traits is her persistence, for sure. Or resilience, I guess, is another way of putting it. And then they're working on it, and the dragon's roaring. You see that they run out of paper. And then you see that Agat's like, oh, Santa Coringe will pack it too hard, so it won't work. And then you can see Tetia's such a thing, wrap me in a membrane of air, it's too it will fall apart. And just wrapping it with cloth is not enough. And then here, this is where Coco is practicing her fire spell here, right? And you can see that it's the best fire spell she made so far. And because yours used to go all the time. And when did you learn to make it so good? So she essentially just kept trying, like repetition or practice makes perfect, right? And this is where Agatha was like, oh, anybody can learn with enough repetition. And then she gets this this light bulb moment. And then they enact their plan, which is pretty cool. And all the girls are ready here. Ready to rumble. And then they start their plan, which essentially is going into certain places around this maze to draw a very specific spell that is essentially what they wanted to do, which is pretty cool. Essentially, and then they get them all ready, and then they move accordingly, which is pretty cool. Because this is where you could see the actual spell in detail. So they'll wrap it in repetition magic that constantly returns it to the initial form. So instead of like making it like so it like becomes like denser or convergence, it makes more sense just to repeat what they're doing as repeat it, but it's kind of like a loop, right? So rather than it, falling apart, it instead returns to its original state, which I think makes the most sense and also keeps it in their desired form as well. Essentially enveloping the wallbreaker billow cluster combination with a repetition spell. And given the size, they'll probably need 5. So that even if it syncs with the dragon's weight, it will return to its original. The sand cloud will keep trying to return to its original shape and maintain its nice fluffiness, which you see the dragon quite likes here. And they call it the dragon disabler cushion. So yeah, they do a pretty good job here. Now they are sneaking past him now while it's distracted. You can see that Tetia here is like, oh, the dragon looks really happy, doesn't it? This is the first time I ever made someone happy with a spell. Who would have thought it brought you such joy? So, in a way, she's kind of reminded of the original purpose of their magic. Which you can see all the girls are now at looking at the spell that's essentially keeping this whole place together. Master might know, I suppose. And then you can see he's looking, and he's following a brushbug here. And then you can see, like, oh, I thought this alley was paved. Then he realizes it was in one of these stones here, and it sort of teleports him. And also, essentially, they I think Tetia is the one who actually breaks this spell here. And they're all trying to keep themselves together while the dragon attacks them. And then Agat, I think, is accidentally swept away. And she's not able to keep up because she doesn't have her flying shoes and gets almost eaten by a dragon, but then their master comes to save the day. And then he essentially holds on here. Or she holds on. And he tells her to just hold on tight to free up his hands, which works. And he unleashes some pretty cool magic here. So I don't know if he drew the spell ahead of time or he just did it on the fly. But man, is it, the visuals are really beautiful. Because the thing is that Qifrey, they'll explain more about this detail later, but one of Qifrey's specialties, or one of his strengths, is his ability to very quickly draw water magic. Not because he likes it, but because he hates water. Either water or rain is one of them. But man, doesn't really show that strength, which is pretty cool. Because he's essentially using the water from the clouds up here and condensing it into a water dragon shape. And then there's this red blood-like liquid, which I don't know if they explain where it comes from. But this detail will probably explain more later on, the importance of the blood, which I'm not going to go into detail here, but it is pretty important. So I'll just mention it is important at least. And then you can see that essentially he uses the this is like his form of offensive magic. He uses the dragon to knock out the real dragon into the ground. And then the dragon dissipates, of course. It's like, oh, we should be good. The dragon is unconscious now. See that they're all pretty scared how to get here, and then like, oh, is everybody here? Oh, nope, Coco's gone. And then we get this really cool sequence with the brim hat. I believe his name is Egwin, I believe. Where he's like, I waited so long for the seeds I planted to sprout. I mean, it's been a while. How do you like the assignment I gave you? Did it aid your growth? I know, I'll give you a gift. I'll teach you things that Qifrey can't. Yes, what a day that will be. So I think, if I can remember, I think he does something involving her hat, I think. I don't remember exact details, but he does something with her hat. So that is definitely interesting to say the least. And they see she wakes up here. And as they found her on the steps. And like, thank God, we all made it back. Did they perhaps do something? She's no, but she was knocked out, so she didn't know anything. You can see that Coco apologized. You can see that this is some great character animation here with her face, because she just felt so bad dragging in everyone. So she apologizes again. And then you can see Qifrey's like, Tetsuya told me what happened there. Sounded like you saved everybody. Ideas are as important to spellcasting as penmanship. So he's trying to give her a bit of a pep talk here. And he's like, oh, I'm glad you're safe. And then, I'm sorry that I worried you. Then I just say they're thriving. And you can see old man Noah's like, why don't I get it in? But now he's asking him for a favor here. He asks, oh, what's in the ink? Would you look into it for me? But then he says, do not tell the Knights Morales. Knights Morales is essentially the that group of red cloaked witches in the opening. They're kind of like the magic police. So it's like, please don't tell the Knights Morales about this. And he's like, do not tell anybody. And then Noro was like, ooh, he's scary. But yeah, and then we get a light on a rainy day. So that's pretty much it. Like, we get some incredible animation from the girls enacting their plan to Qifrey unleashing the water dragon spell. And yeah, it's a generally like an absolutely phenomenal episode. Probably the best episode we've had so far in the series. And we are only at episode 5. So yeah. Anyway, kind of interested in what will be the next top episode, but we'll see as we go along. Most likely, I think on episode 6 is probably where we meet Arugio, who is a Qifrey's friend. I'm hoping that's the case, as a sort of like a keeping things a little bit more low key, and then eventually ramping things up later on. But yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed me talking about this episode. It's really enjoyable. I hope everyone who watched it did enjoy it a lot and can appreciate the stellar animation, as probably one of the best episodes I've seen all year, and that says a lot. So yeah. Anyway, that's all from me, and thanks for watching. Looking forward to talking about this more next week.